This is Ross Berman, and you're listening to the Chicago Singer-Songwriter podcast.
Hi, I'm Chris Dever, and this is the Chicago Singer-Songwriter podcast. I'm here with Ross Berman.
Glad to be here.
Easily one of the busiest singer-songwriters in the city. Ross, how many shows would you say you play in a week?
I mean, it usually averages out to about one or two. I mean, you know, there are those hustling nights where I'll do 3 or 4. It, you know, depends on.
In a single night, or is that throughout the
yeah,
week?
I mean, if there was one night I remember, it worked out that I was pretty much ping-ponging between a couple stops on the Blue Line, and so I was and the way it worked out is I was able to just kind of schedule them around those stops, and I did like 4 shows in one night once.
Jesus.
But then, you know, that comes with its own burden of having to be that asshole that kind of shows up and is like, oh yeah, thanks for having me, I got to peace out early.
Yeah,
all right, thanks. Bye.
You always hate to be that guy, but when you got somewhere else to be, you gotta go.
Yeah, and that's the truth, but it doesn't change the fact that you wish you could hang out.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's one thing I always try to do, unless I have to work like super early in the morning, is whenever I play like an open mic night or something, like stick around as long as I possibly can. Because there's nothing worse than like getting to the end of the list and it's just you and the host, you know, playing or whatever.
Oh, and I've been there. I've whether it's stand up, whether it's music, I've been that guy. It's like fucking 2 a.m. and you're just. It's barely even the host at that point. It's you know, the host is asleep.
The bartender's like swinging his rag around. Like, you're keeping him up. How long have you been doing the Chicago music scene? Because you're not originally from here, but how long have you been in Chicago?
Well, I've been doing it about 1.5 2 years, maybe, very seriously. I just started going on a whim, and then it just kind of snowballed from there.
And how long had you been in Chicago at that point?
I'd been in Chicago a good 4 or 5 years.
All right.
For school, and I hadn't really been playing the guitar as much as I used to, and then I started picking it up a little more.
When did you start playing guitar? How old were you? Do you remember?
I was probably about 13.
And do you remember what it was that pushed you to pick it up?
I originally was very reluctant. I didn't think I was I could sing and I could hold a tune, but I didn't consider myself insanely musical.
When you say you could sing, was it like in the shower, in the car kind of stuff?
Oh no, like I did choir
choir
and chorale in middle school.
So you had a little bit of for that age, a formal music background.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had a lot more moxie than I did knowledge of things like theory or harmony, but I wanted to be there, and at that age, that was the important thing.
And as a 13-year-old just picking up the guitar, what kind of music were you into at that point? Who would you have been listening to?
I was listening to a lot of Blink-182, and a lot of U2, a lot of Sum 41, a lot of bands with numbers in the name.
Yeah.
It was like 2003. It was a big time to have a number in your name.
Very true.
I think Maroon 5 was just starting to hit it off.
So it was a lot more like big rock star kind of bands.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I'm coming from outside of Syracuse, New York, so it's not like we don't have a very big music scene out there. It's not like there was a lot of folk music. There was, a lot of that sort of plastic country music and a lot of sort of top 40. It's the kind of place where you flip radio stations and they'd be at the same point in the song because they're run by the same software, and it's the early days of the algorithm.
Yeah. Not much different here in Chicago.
Yeah.
Pretty much my teenage years too. But now I think it's safe to say that you are a folk singer.
That's what my business cards say. So I kind of have to.
And when did that transition happen? How old were you when you started getting more into folk music and writing your own stuff?
Honestly, I was very ignorant to a lot of folk, especially early folk music and a lot of folk revival stuff. And then of all the places, I was finally getting around to watching Mad Men after like a few years of people telling me to watch Mad Men, and they end the first season with "Don't think twice, it's all right." And I think that was the first time I had heard sort of that side of Dylan. Because usually you hear, I'd heard some of the political stuff, some of the electric stuff, but you hadn't really heard that. I don't know, I remember hearing it and thinking it sounded like winter. It had that very sort of cold, desolate sound to it. It's a sound that that song is a feeling that pretty much anyone who lives in a city knows. Because, there's hundreds of people, and, whether it's a friend, whether it's a lover, whether it's whatever, you meet someone and you just kind of go, I'm not going to look back from this initial meeting, but if I meet you again, I meet you again. You kind of just got to accept what a big city it is.
And so that song had such an impact on you that you were like, I could write about my experiences in this, and then hopefully evoke a feeling out of people.
Yeah, it wasn't so much that it made me think I could write that, it just kind of kicked a door open, And it was this other side of folk, that's the side of folk music where you get stuff like Spanish is the Loving Tongue, and The Water is Wide, and a lot of those longing ballads. I hadn't heard a lot of those longing ballads, and I'm a longing kind of guy. I'm a dreamer, so that kind of spoke to me.
And you're also a storyteller. I mean, you hear it in your songs. You're also going to school for playwriting, correct?
Yeah. I'm at Columbia for playwriting.
So very, very story-driven.
I think we live in a very postmodern society, and we forget that stuff like music. It's a story. Beethoven's symphonies. He's telling you it doesn't have words, but he's telling you a story. Maybe it does have words. Maybe I'm just ignorant to classical music, but. I know Ode to Joy has like some kind of choral arrangement.
Right.
So there's clearly words that I don't understand, but they're still, telling you more of a story than, God, like Ariana Grande. She doesn't tell me a story. She got a great voice. She seems to have a great producer behind her, but she's not telling me any stories, or at least any story I haven't heard. And so I just think it's important to really, whatever you're doing, embrace the kind of storytelling aspect to it.
Yeah,
we like stories.
Totally. Now, do you find yourself writing more about your own experiences? Like, does it get very autobiographical in your songs?
Not always. I think, I'm never afraid to get autobiographical with it, but at the same time, you don't want to. There's a difference between getting autobiographical and therapy. Like, I think, especially, especially with blog culture, we have a lot of people that even before they try and tell a fictional story will just say, "Fuck it, I'll write about my own life and I'll just spew what happened to me on the page."
Yeah.
And there's a market for that. There'll always be a market for that. But if you can tell something that isn't just about you, it can be a little bigger than you, and it can be a little more, accessible, but at the same time, I don't know how other people write, but you got to pull it out of yourself, whether you're, writing about yourself or not. So there's always going to be that sort of viscous on it that's clearly from, whoever wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say all my songs are autobiographical.
No.
None of the songs that I sang for this podcast, I would say, are autobiographical.
Right.
Yeah, I come from I think I come from a much more abstract, like, as much as I focus on the story, I come from a much more abstract space inspirationally.
Okay. So it's sort of the story between the lines.
Exactly.
Look for it.
You look at something, I think with Ballad of Richard and Dicky Lee, it's essentially the story of aging. It's the story of, that sort of generational warning that seems to be in all good art, whether it be, the Bible, whether it be, Dylan, Cohen, any of it. There's always this kind of, generation to generation tradition that has to sort of come about, and it's usually one generation seeing something and reporting it, and, saying we need to stay in our comfort zone. We tend to tell our children to stay in their comfort zone until you're, ready to leave it, and a lot of them don't get ready to leave it. And so it's kind of about that struggle of the youth wanting to leave and the elders not wanting the youth to leave.
Interesting. Well, while we're talking about it, let's listen to the Ballad of Richard and Dicky Lee.
Here's the story of 1 and 3, Richard and his grandson, Dicky Lee, sitting on a hill by a lone poplar tree, sitting there peacefully, 1 and 3. Richard said, "Your father's dead, you see, fell off a boat and now it's you and me. You were named for him, Dicky Lee. Your kingdom stretches far as you can see." And they sat there by the lone poplar tree as the sky turned red and the grass grew free. Richard warned his grandson, Dicky Lee, "You better stay here by this old tree." And Dicky Lee said, "Why must that be? For my kingdom stretches far as I can see. Why must I stay here by this old tree? What does that say about what could be?" Richard said, "Your father wandered free, fell off a boat, and now it's you and me. You were named for him, Dicky Lee. Freedom just ain't worth that cost of free." Richard said, "Your father wandered free. He stayed late at bars that closed at 3, till he was swallowed up by the sea. Won't have that happen to you, Dicky Lee." Richard died beneath the poplar tree as he sent a dove across the sea. Following the dove was Dicky Lee. He was off in search of his own poplar tree. And that's the story of 1 and 3, Richard and his grandson, Dicky Lee. Might ask yourself, what's that to do with me? Well, if we're lucky, we're 1, but mostly we're 2 and 3.
Now, that song's available on your album on Bandcamp, right?
Yes, it is. The Folk City Hustle.
The Folk City Hustle.
rossberman.bandcamp.com.
And you've got, 13, 14 songs on there?
13. There's 12 plus a live track. Yeah, I mean, it's only $5.50, so...
So if you like that song, go check out the rest of them. It's an excellent album. You can buy it and have it on your iPad for, $6? Not even?
Exactly. And if you don't want the whole album, you can buy the one song.
There you go.
I'm not going to tell you what to buy. I'm just going to let you know it's out there.
And if you want to throw some extra money at them, I think Bandcamp has that option.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think I said it. Pay what you want.
There you go.
If not, I'll change it.
In this song, you use numbers to designate the generations, which is something I don't think I've heard before in any song that I could recall. Where did that idea come from?
I think in America we have a very short-sighted idea of history. And so it's always this kind of idea of whenever you're because we're all immigrants, except for the Native Americans. We're all immigrants. So there's that first generation that comes over. And it kind of goes back to a joke in 30 Rock about the first generation comes to America and builds something and really tries to make sure the next generation wants for nothing, and the next generation goes off to law school, or they go off to, they go to college and they go balls deep in the chaos of the world. And then the third generation takes improv classes and, goes snowboarding and tries to be a professional snowboarder. It's that kind of progression. So it's that idea of the 20th century culture sort of sees itself as the first culture that really meant anything, because there's plenty of history, and there's the great Victorian era, but once the mass media comes in, that's when shit seems to get real, and that's only 3 generations. It's a very short-sighted view of culture.
I wonder if it's just because it's more relatable. Like we've never had a period in our lives where Victorian culture, I mean, aside from TV, was something that we could reach out and touch. But like we've always had machines, we've always had the products of the industrial and technological revolutions. I wonder if it's just easier to focus on that because they're tangible. But
I almost feel like they're too tangible to some people, because you look at the 30s, you look at the 50s, you look at the 60s, and while there's a lot of stuff that is painfully similar today, there's still plenty of stuff that seems just as foreign as the Victorian era. I mean, this is a time, like the 50s, 60s, we could say it's relatable, but it's still the time when they're ptomaine poisoning and stuff like that, and they don't understand foodborne bacteria. and so we kind of see it as like, oh well, we've always been simple, and it's not. Well, yes and no. It's a kind of, I don't know what I'm saying. It's like they feel that they came directly out of this one era as opposed to all the eras that precede. Because while we can feel like the 20th century is more tangible, there's people just as relatable in the 1400s. I mean, that's what folk music teaches us. You look at something like Water is Wide or Wild Mountain Thyme, and these songs, St. James Infirmary goes back to the 1600s as a poem about sailors. There's plenty that reaches so much farther back that whether it's more tangible or not, it's still short-sighted, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Fair. Speaking of looking into the past, you've also got a song that you recorded, Paddy's Lamentation.
Yes.
How old is that song?
That's an old Irish immigrant song from about the 1860s. The famine's 1840s, but 1860s, there's still a ton of Irish coming over, whether it be because of the way Britain was treating them, whether it be because of the sort of results of the famine. There's a lot of Irish coming over, and they end up just fighting in this war that, let's face it, the Civil War, it seems so petty that we had to fight for that union, Mm-hmm. It seems so like we really we were really at that, and it's just as true today. Like, we can't get along. That's how badly we can't get along as a country. Like,
constantly new us versus them battles going on. I mean, New York most recently.
Exactly. I mean, it's that us versus them mentality. It's good for the cops. It's good for the crooks. It's good for everyone. And so it just sort of keeps replicating, and the Irish come over and they don't know what to make of it. Mm-hmm. It's this, like, because the Civil War was a barbaric fucking war. Yeah. I mean, it was cannons and amputations left and right, and to be, just trying to, obviously there were a lot of Americans that were trying to scrape out their name in the Civil War, but to be, to have just come over.
And have really no interest in it except for, I want to be part of this country, and so they're telling me I gotta fight.
And that's the kind of stuff I find sort of, fascinating. I'm a Civil War geek. I'm a Irish history geek. I remember in the 4th grade, I did a project about the Irish fight for independence and the early 1900s, 1919, 1921, stuff like that. Michael Collins, and I'm teaching my 4th grade teacher about this stuff with the presentation.
Well, let's get into a little Irish history with Paddy's Lamentation.
Well, it's by the hush, me boys, and by that I mean hold your noise. Listen to sad Paddy's narration. I was by hunger pressed and in poverty distressed, so I took a thought I'd leave the Irish nation. So I sold my horse and plow, my little pig and sow, my father's plot of land. I then departed, and my sweetheart bid McGee, never again shall I see, for I left her there that morning broken hearted. So here, boys, and take my advice, to America I'll have you not be going. There's nothing here but war, where the murder and cannon roar, and I wish I was at home in dear old Dublin. Well, myself and 1,000 more to America sailed o'er, our fortune to be making, we were thinking. When we got to Yankee land, they shoved a gun into our hand and said, Paddy, you must go and fight for Lincoln. So here, boys, and take my advice, to America I'll have you not be going. There's nothing here but war, where the murder and cannon roar, and I wish I was at home in dear old Dublin. General Meagher to us said, if you get shot or lose your head, every mother's son of you will have a pension. Well, me, I lost my leg, and all I got's a wooden peg. It's only the truth to you I mention. So here, boys, and take my advice, to America I'll have you not be going. There's nothing here but war, where the murder and cannon roar, and I wish I was at home in dear old Dublin. Well, me, I'm of good luck, I get paid on Indian buck. Ireland's the country I delight in. To the devil I will say, God can curse America. I've had it up to here with their hard fighting. So here, boys, and take my advice, to America I'll have you not be going. There's nothing here but war, where the murder and cannon roar, and I wish I was at home in dear old Dublin. And I wish I was at home in dear old Dublin. And I wish I was at home in dear old Dublin.
One thing that really strikes me about seeing you play live, and especially with a song like this, is your memorization of lyrics. I think a lot of people have difficulty with it, especially, a cover song like this that just goes on and on and on. I mean, there's a lot of material in here.
Yeah.
And I can attest, Ross didn't record that with a lyric sheet in front of him or anything. That was all from memory. Have you always had that sort of way of retaining information, or was that something that's specific to music?
Well, part of it's I have a theater background, and so just from having memorized lines, you sort of... Because really, memorization's a parlor trick when it comes down to it. Because I could sing with lyrics every damn time, and no one would give me shit about it. But you take especially a song that's not my own. That's I'm not an Irish immigrant that fought in the Civil War. I don't got a peg. I am the exact opposite of that. And if I can memorize that, if I can get it in my brain, it's something close to sympathy. I won't say or empathy. I'm not going to say it's full on total. I've walked a mile in an Irish immigrant's union uniform. I haven't, but it's memorized as words. Mm-hmm. Memorized certain feeling that they wanted that song to have. I mean, whether that's the original chord progression or not, who knows? It's just a... I mean, it's a little of my own, it's a little of other people's, it's a little of every version of that song I've heard. And so it's more about capturing the feeling.
What's the most, I guess, famous version of that song? Like, who would have covered that most people would know?
I mean, that's one you'll find a lot of, like, those world albums have it. Like, I know Linda Thompson has a version of it. I think they used it in Gangs of New York. I mean, it's just a very... I mean, it's obviously not a standard because it's a little dated, but it's one of those ones that survived. It survived on things like the melody and the.
So there was no Mumford and Sons cover of it.
I mean, maybe one day they're still young. Give them time to get tired out and need to cover some stuff.
So we've got one more song left. It's called "Song for the Birds."
If I was a bird, would I watch them? Those locust swarms of peace. They cling to roofs like it's nothing. What is it birds don't see? Am I tiny till I'm scary? Is the glass really that thin? Is it better in the treetops? Is it better in the wind? The bird is made of dust. That doesn't mean it knows. Are they really flying anywhere on that commanding wind that blows? Does the dove not hear the raven? Can the pigeon hear the crow? Do the birds burn mad with passion? Do birds have friend or foe? I'll write a song for birds. I'll write a song for man. I'll write a song worth singing. I'll sing everything I can. Some things can't be spoken. Some truths are not for words. Some winds don't shake the heavens. Some winds are for the birds. Song for birds, and I'll write a song for man, and I'll write a song worth singing. I'll sing everything I can. Some things cannot be spoken. Some truths are not for words. Some winds don't shake the heavens. Some winds are for the birds.
So tell us a little bit about "Song for the Birds." Where did this one come from?
This one's, I think...
It's your own, correct?
Yes, it's my own. And I think it's the kind of song that every musician not only writes, but kind of has to write. You know, it's... I sort of... Not to sound, too crazy philosophical, I see it as like an incantation almost of this idea that It's in that line about I'll write a song for birds, I'll write a song for man, I'll write a song worth singing, I'll sing everything I can. It's that you can try and be the greatest songwriter in the world and fucking kill yourself over every syllable and every word and every note, and you can memorize every damn scale in the world, and all it's gonna matter is if you can sing what you can sing, Because I've met plenty of people, gotten up on an open mic stage or even on, in front of a sold out house and just bitten off far more than they can chew. whether it be, with some like I could never be Rush. I'm not gonna be Geddy Lee and Neil Peart coming up with these, giant, 2112 kind of, or yeah, whatever that album is. But I can write a song about what it's like to watch the birds. I can write a song about that kind of thing. It's a keep it simple, stupid kind of song.
So where does the songwriting process for you start? Do you do music first and then the lyrics around it? Does the chorus pop in and you write around that? How does it work for you?
I wish I was at that point, but it's just sort of that. A lot of times it will more be lyrics, just because I'm a very verbal person, as you can tell by my rambling. I sometimes,
it's a podcast. We need that.
Sometimes I gotta talk until I find it, and like, and so it'll kind of come from that. Like I've got plenty of songs on Folk City Hustle where I sat down and I was like, I've got an idea for the tone I want for this. I've got an idea for what I want to say, and then I sort of build the song from there. But there are also other songs where I was walking, down the street, and I get a little chunk in my head, and I've got just far enough to go to wherever I'm going, then I'll just walk it out and sort of hum it to myself or sing it to myself. And I mean, that's how I built Set My Body Free, Thing Like Change. Those were like, I'd gone to like the convenience store, gotten off the Addison bus, I was just kind of humming to myself, and I decided, well, I better just keep walking home, because I gotta sort of sort this song out in my head, and then I can go home and write it down. I never really write down sort of the musical aspect of it. Like, there are no chord charts to any of my songs. It's all just, I type down the lyrics and I try and build a melody around them.
Do you literally sit at a typewriter, or do you?
No, I tried to have a typewriter, but it did not work. Because I got sold a broken one. And so I just type on my laptop.
That works.
Sometimes I handwrite. I've spent plenty of time in classes, pretending to pay attention, writing a song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much a process as a sort of attack. I'm not gonna pretend the songs weren't there to be written.
Mm-hmm. And then do you record it so you have the music down somewhere, or do you just sort of play it over and over again where it's not going anywhere? It could change if it needs to, but it's pretty much stuck.
If I'm home alone and I'm feeling brave enough, I'll record it, but otherwise I like to see what sticks to it. So I'll play it a couple times by myself, and then maybe I'll pull it out at an open mic or at a show if I'm feeling confident enough with it. Yeah, it's the recording, it just comes down to whether I have the time to record it or not. Mm-hmm. Otherwise,
But it's not gone if you don't have it recorded somewhere.
No,
you don't wake
it's
up the
never,
next morning going, oh man, that was such a good song. I wish I'd remembered how it went.
No, and I'm sure many people kind of labor over a song, but I'm not afraid to abandon a song if I have to. Like, if it's just not, if I've got a third or half, even 3/4 of a song and it's not done, I'll just let it sit there. I don't need to finish a song that doesn't want to get finished.
Do you have any songs that you play out now that people would know that sort of sat for a while and you came back and finished it, or completely changed because something happened?
I mean, yeah, because it happens to a lot. Like with Set My Body Free and Heart of the World and stuff like that, those were songs that I wrote before I started playing harmonica. And then once I started playing harmonica, those songs, sort of took better shape because I was able to sort of make my own fills. But then, like, there are some songs, like, from the little Jew that wrote the Bible, that I've been, like, where it started as, maybe 4 or 5 verses, and it's just sort of, it kept snowballing to the point where it seemed like every time I pulled it out, there was a new kind of verse chunk added to it.
So how many verses are you up to on that one?
I mean, it's not many. It's like I don't know, 8 or so. It's a long song.
Yeah.
It's one of those songs where it doesn't feel that long, and then people go, "That was like 6 minutes."
Or if you put it on paper, it'd be like notebooks full.
Oh yeah, no, I mean
that's
it's paragraph. It's one of those I couldn't keep it on one page of typed if I tried.
And how many songs would you say that you write in a month? Because you're fairly prolific. I mean, you're constantly busting out new songs.
It's I don't know. I honestly it can be sometimes as low as one a week, or sometimes it's one a day. Sometimes it's, there was a period when I was living alone where it was song after song after song.
So what you're saying on recording is that your girlfriend's fucking up your songwriting process. Do we have you?
No, she's just making. Basically, what it comes down to is now I don't throw out as many of the ones that are clearly just kind of ego-driven fits of gibberish.
So she's more of a filter. Even though
yeah, no, I mean, and so was living with. I had 2 roommates before I lived with her. That sort of started the filter process, but I had my own room, so that sort of made it a little less filtered. But at the same time, you're like, if I'm gonna be practicing something, it's gonna be something that I really feel like practicing, and I feel like I'm saying, it focuses you a little bit.
Yeah, I get that.
Because I think, especially in this sort of folk revival world we all live in, it's real easy to just do the gibberish and pretend that anyone that doesn't get it just isn't on your level, and
just make stuff rhyme.
And I can promise you, all of those people know that they're selling bullshit, but you gotta if you're gonna sell it, you might as well make. I'm not Cards Against Humanity. I'm not gonna sell anyone literal bullshit.
Not yet, but
I'm full of it, but tight. I make sure the bullshit gets flushed.
Yeah. So for people that are interested in doing, maybe not quite as much as you do, but doing the singer-songwriter thing in Chicago, do you have any advice for people just starting out or that are interested in maybe pursuing it one day?
Yeah, and I mean, it's not my advice. It's Texas Fred, right?
Yeah.
This was actually Texas Fred gave me this advice on Sunday.
For those of you who don't know, Texas Fred is a staple at the Gallery Cabaret. He plays pretty much every Sunday. I've also seen him out playing the sax.
Yep.
On north of Milwaukee.
I got some of his writing in my backpack.
Really?
Yeah, he gave me some of his writing on Sunday.
If you're ever at the Gallery Cabaret and you see Texas Fred outside, stop by and say, yeah, he's got some stories.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But and then it was the Gallery Cabaret, so I don't remember it word for word, but it was basically, don't play for applause, don't play for sex, just play because you want to play. Because that's what I've always, I was already dating my girlfriend when I started really taking this folk thing seriously, so it's always just been, it's been very song driven for me. I'm not trying to go for the whole sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing. I'm just trying to write a good song.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the best advice. Don't get me wrong. Madness has done me wonders, but I think we expect a very sort of self-destructive aspect from our artists, especially in this era. We really, if you're not, Bukowski or Belushi or Hunter S. Thompson, then I don't think people really take you that seriously anymore. Yeah. I would say live as close to the edge as you're comfortable with, but don't feel like you gotta be forced to do anything,
So for people that aren't doing the open mic night thing quite yet, or they're looking for other places to play, what are some good open mics in the city that you've been to?
Oh,
give me a day by day. Start with Sunday.
Sunday, Gallery Cabaret. Also the store. The store's great because they give you a CD.
Yeah, it is pretty great, and they have drink specials on Mondays, I know, where it's $3 drafts. Do they have anything on Sundays?
I don't remember.
But yeah, you do get a free CD from the store. Yep. So if you need something to just listen to at home, or you want to post it,
made by a real fine sound man. This is not some amateur stuff.
It's pro.
It sounds real nice. Mm-hmm, But yes, the Sunday is the store, and then both of the gallery open mics are great on Sunday.
With the Gallery Cabaret on Sunday, make sure you get there. It starts, there's 2 open mic nights. There's one that starts at 7:30ish, hosted by Peter Triolo. And then there's a second one that starts at 9:30, hosted by Matt Norris. The 9:30 one fills up. I mean, like the you see people just watching Matt when he comes in the door, waiting for him to lay the list down.
I've been there, man. I've like hip checked Chris P and stuff like that out of the way, man. Yeah. It's
and it goes down, and I mean it's full. Where if you're not standing in line, you're not playing until 1 or 2 in the morning.
Yep.
So you got that. You got store on Mondays.
Yep, and then I also like the Uncommon Ground open mic on Mondays is pretty good.
The one on Clark.
Yep. Right. Yeah, they have they got their mac and cheese. So that's always good, and it's also you can win some money if you play it right.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they do this thing where at the end of the
especially if you're a white girl with friends, man.
Oh my God! Right?
You're set there if you're a white girl with friends.
So they do this thing where they at the end of the show, the guy who hosts it gets up and names everybody, and then he has a little decibel meter on his phone, and whoever gets the loudest applause gets what's in the cup. So prior to that, they pass around a cup, and you donate some money to musicians, and whoever wins gets to take it home. I was there one night where this girl brought her whole family. It was like the whole middle section was just her family.
Yep.
And of course she won. Yep. But it was really cool because she knew that was why she won, and she donated it to some charity.
Yeah, no, I'm not sort of saying that in a pejorative way. I don't go to them to compete.
No.
It's still it's stiff competition. It's a fun show. It's I mean they pull some real talented songwriters out of the woodwork. And then also Mondays the one at Quenchers is great.
I haven't hit that one up yet.
I mean it's not always crowded, but the room sounds great.
And they do it in the room that has the stage, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not in the bar. And they have free popcorn like all the time.
Yeah, free popcorn. They got food.
Great beer selection.
Yeah, plenty of beer.
I mean, it's like stuff that you wouldn't be able to go and just buy in the stores. It's like limited run craft beers.
Yeah, no, they're a fine establishment. And then Tuesdays, obviously, Lily's.
Yep.
You gotta. I was talking to Rich about Lily's open mic, and I told him that Lily could run over my dog and I'd still show up to that open mic. It's a magical place.
It really is, and it's become such like a staple of I mean, if you're like a singer-songwriter in Chicago, you've played at Lily's at some point, and the people that go to it now almost talk about it like it's a
very reverential place these days. Yeah,
Greenwich Village. Somebody compared it to Greenwich Village, and I think it definitely has like that community aspect to it. Where now, I mean, you go and somebody will get up on stage, and all of a sudden there's 4 people up there jamming with them.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of the fun of it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Wednesdays there's a great singer-songwriter night that on alternate weeks is hosted by a real attractive half Jew.
Ross, of course, is referring to himself.
Not to toot my own horn or anything, but I run a pretty good singer-songwriter night. And from what I hear, Gerardo does a real good job on the weekend, on the weeks I'm not hosting.
Yeah, I mean, I went to it months and months ago. My Wednesday nights just suck right now, but I mean, there was like nobody. I think it was like me and you and the guy that hosted it one night. And now you've got a crowd that shows up.
And it's still at that point where you got a lot of room to play, and so we get to go through the list a few times, and it's really turning into a fun night.
Yeah, so if you show up at the Gallery Cabaret or Lily's and it's just too much for you, definitely check out the Gallery on Wednesday nights because it's a smaller crowd. It's just mostly singer-songwriters sitting around playing songs for each other.
Yeah, and if you're real lucky, the bartender Tressa will bring her accordion, and that's always a treat. I mean, that's one of my favorite parts of hosting that. Is I get to be like, all right, Tressa's coming up now.
Wow,
because she's a lot of fun to listen to. But also a good Wednesday open mic. If you're ever up north, the Heartland Cafe has one called In One Ear. And that's where I got that was the open mic that I went to because I was just like, I got some songs I'll try out. And then it was very much the support of that place that really gave me really sort of emboldened me to go forward. Yeah, I mean it's one of those anything goes open mics. You can do music, you can do stand up. It started as a poetry open mic, so there's a lot of great poets and spoken word artists. There was a guy that used to do like miming and clowning. He did a mimed reenactment of the Trayvon Martin incident that was hilariously offensive. Well, because it was like, and you almost expect it to, like, when he says that, you expect it to be the exact incident, and really what it was just like a lot of like that general miming stuff of like pulling a rope and being behind glass, but he was in a hoodie.
Oh, wow.
So it was just like, it wasn't offensive on like, oh, you shouldn't do that level. It was offensive on this level of, what? Why? Okay. You go for it.
I love those anything goes open mic nights. I mean, you do get some like really bad stuff you have to sit through, because you get people that they go there with their friends and they just hop up on stage and tell a story or whatever. But like, those are the ones where you get those gems. I mean, I was at one.
Well, it's also like a super. Sometimes it can get like super political from like those
yeah,
white like Rasta Loyola students. That really want, like, oh, there was one guy who used to show up and do like this industrial rap. It's kind of like Marilyn Manson, but he would rap over it, and a lot of it was clearly stuff written on some very strong mushrooms, a lot of third eye stuff.
So if you're a white Rastafarian in the Loyola area, now you know where to go.
Heartland Cafe.
That's right.
But when it's good, it's real good. You got just some great Chicago poets there. And then Thursdays, Gallery. Gallery's a good time on Thursdays.
That one's hosted by Peter.
It's also Peter Triolo.
Excellent host.
Yeah, the man is he's the open mic MVP, I would say.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know anything about Fridays or Saturdays.
I don't know if there are any on Fridays.
I've heard stuff like I've heard about a Friday. I don't remember where it was, but I remember being told about a Friday open mic.
Chicago Bagel Authority, is that still going on Saturdays?
Yes, that's still going on Saturdays. That's Nate Marsh's thing, and he gets guest hosts a lot. That's a lot of fun. It's like usually starts around 5:30, 6-ish. It goes till about 8:30.
Mm-hmm. And that one's another one. It's never super crowded. The room sounds great. Nate'll, I don't know if he's still doing it, but he'll usually video record you and post it on Facebook, so you've got a video you can share with your friends.
Yeah, if he's there, he'll record it. Like when he does the guest host, we don't have the technology.
Yeah, so it's also a cool opportunity if you want to host an open mic night. Try out your hosting chops. It's a cool place to do it. Just hit up Nate on Facebook. It's Nate Marsh. But yeah, so you've got pretty much. I mean, in Chicago, there's somewhere to go aside from Friday nights, but that's just because there's so much other stuff going on Friday nights in Chicago. But there's somewhere to go play literally every night.
Yep.
So if you're listening to this and want to check Ross out, he's almost always at the Gallery or at Lily's or hosting at the Gallery on Wednesdays. So go check him out there. Hear some more of his songs. Ross, any parting words, any final thoughts you want to leave the listeners with?
The best advice I think I ever heard was enjoy every sandwich. So I'll leave you with that.
Enjoy every sandwich.
Enjoy every sandwich, and I mean that. Even if you don't think it counts as a sandwich, count it as a sandwich and enjoy it.
Solid advice. I almost forgot to pitch. We have a Christmas album that we're going to be posting online, probably around the same time this podcast goes up. I think I've been designated to post it on SoundCloud, so it'll be linked to the Singer-Songwriter podcast. But it's me, Ross, Chris Kleehammer, Trini Jimenez.
Yep. Boys versus Girls, and Eric Clausen.
Yep. All have a song that we contributed, and everyone's kind of playing on everyone's stuff. It was a drunken good time, so make sure you check that out. We'll just be putting it up for free. But Ross, thanks for hanging out today. Thanks for sharing your songs and your stories.
Absolutely. Anytime.
That was the Chicago Singer-Songwriter Podcast. I'm Chris Dever. Keep writing and keep playing, Chicago.